Brett McKay here, and welcome to another edition of the Art of Manliness podcast. For millennia, stone lifting was an important part of cultures around the world, and its significance went far beyond feats of strength. Stone lifting was part of weddings and funerals, used as a job interview to assess someone's fitness as a farmhand, and included in rites of passage and test of all-around manhood. Much of the world's ancient stone lifting culture has been forgotten, and rocks that used to be hoisted regularly in town squares and cemeteries have been sitting untouched for hundreds of years. David Keohan, an Irish world champion kettlebell lifter turned amateur folklorist, has set out to change that. In the last couple of years, David has been on the hunt for Ireland's legendary lifting stones. He uses oral and written history to search them out and learn their stories, and then hoist them himself, once again putting wind under stones that haven't been picked up for centuries. Today on the show, David shares the significance of stone lifting around the world, and specifically in Irish culture, the practicalities of lifting a 400-pound stone off the ground, and what stone lifting has taught him about being a man. After the show's over, check out our show notes at aom.is/stonelifting. David Keohan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Brett. Really appreciate it, man.
So you are a world champion kettlebell lifter who has also become an expert archaeologist and folklorist, specializing in discovering lost Irish lifting stones. And we're going to talk about your work with lifting stones here on the show. But before we do, let's talk about your fitness and health journey. You got into the strength training game late in your life. What was your life like before you discovered kettlebells, and what got you started with swinging?
Yeah, good question. Good question. So, Brett, when I started off, like I said, I only got into any fitness or strength or training of any kind at the age of 31, you know. Before that, I was mainly into music and art. I met my wife in art college. So playing in bands, you know, party scene, and like going out in the night times and, you know, having great crack that way, you know, all the way through my late teens and 20s was party life and drinking and all the rest that goes with it. But then, you know, when you hit your 30s, your body kind of says, hold on a second, kid, you got to start looking after yourself now, you know. So I got to 31 and I was just in a really bad place, kind of mentally and physically, just not in a good place, not happy with how my body was responding, you know. At that stage, I had young kids. I couldn't run around after them. So I went to a doctor, and the doctor was pretty much saying, look, we're going to have to put you on X, Y, and Z medication from now on, you know, heart medication, blood pressure, asthmatic inhalers, all that kind of stuff. So I went out with a doctor's note to get all this medication. And I decided, how about if I get fit first, just to myself, you know, let's see if I can get fit, and if that will help. If it doesn't help, I'll take the medication anyway. I have nothing else to lose. So I started running. And I remember the first time I went running, I couldn't run 100 yards. I remember trying to run up to the top of my estate and having to go home really badly defeated. You know, lungs falling out, thought I was going to die, you know, just in a really, really bad place. But I went out the next morning. I was going out in the morning so no one would see the kind of heavy guy running. You know, I was up around 100 kgs, maybe over it. Which for my height, I'm only 5'9", so it's not a healthy place to be. But I started going out every morning running, and I was running, and after about 4 to 6 weeks, I was hitting 5K. My breathing, my respiratory problems, which I was diagnosed as asthmatic, that was gone. My blood pressure was coming down. I was eating healthier. I was just feeling better, you know. I never really understood what feeling healthy felt like, because I never done any training in my life or sports the whole way through. I was on a totally different path. But then I started feeling what feeling healthy felt like. I was like, this feels great. So I just kept the running going. And with about 6 months later, I ran my first marathon, which kind of was the light bulb moment for me. It was like an epiphany moment. It was like, you've done something difficult that not a lot of people in the world do. Kind of what else can you do? And from there, I got into kettlebell training, like just HIIT classes and just training in a gym with light kettlebells, 12s, 16s, 20 kgs. But the gym I was in just so happened to have the only kettlebell sport team in Munster, which is the province I live in Ireland. And just got into kettlebell training then and got into the sport end of it, because I was told like your body will suit it. You've got long arms, you know, you've got a short torso, so you'll find it easy to rest in like rack position and stuff. So just got into this crazy Russian endurance strength sport in 2012 and just had some fantastic years with that, you know.
Are you still competing professionally?
No, I set myself goals, Brett, at the very start of my kettlebell career, because I remember watching, I go down in 2013 and watching the European Championships were held just about 15 minutes down the road from me, and seeing these guys lifting 232 kilo kettlebells for 10 minutes straight, clean and jerk, you know, and just being amazed at that a human body could do that. Because I was lifting 216s at that stage, and that was difficult, to get to 10 minutes. But watching these guys was like, okay, I want to do this. I want to get up to the 32s. So I trained like a demon for the next couple of years, and I got onto the amateur Irish kettlebell sport team in 2014, lifting 224s. Now, believe me, 224s for distance is difficult. To go out and pick up a pair of 24 kilo kettlebells and clean and jerk them, even 10 times in a row, and tell me how you feel. So we were doing that for between 60 to 100 reps in sessions. 78 reps actually won me the world title in 2015. So like 78 times in a row without putting them down. So you can imagine how nutritional that is on your, on your cardio. So it took a lot of technique training and a lot of work. But I set myself my goals. Like I said, I won my world championships, I won my European championships, nationals, set a world record, competed on 32s, got my master of sports, hit everything I wanted to hit. And I bowed out gracefully at the end of 2019.
Well, this is interesting. I don't know much about the sport aspect of kettlebell. So it's not just a strength component, it's actually an endurance event?
It's more an endurance. I call it strength endurance. Do you know what the closest thing it reminds me of, Brett, is Olympic rowing.
Okay.
So it's just to be able to put in max effort in short bursts for a long distance. So I mean, you think about it, you're lifting 232s, you're lifting them for 10 minutes straight. So I mean, I was doing about between 4 to 6 RPM with that. So you have to be able to relax yourself in certain positions. You can't stand there braced with a couple of 32s for 10 minutes. Your body just won't be able to do it. So it was all about technique and using your body as efficiently as possible. It's actually a really cool sport.
So you did the kettlebell training. How did you discover stone lifting?
Yeah, like I said, I'd hit all these goals, and I'm just so proud to say that I could do that, especially when things like world records and stuff, which still stands, thank God. But I just done this really cool thing in my life. I finished that in 2019. And it's kind of, what am I going to do now? What's next? And then COVID struck. So they took COVID very, very seriously. The very stringent lockdowns over here. We were in a 5K lockdown. We couldn't leave. There was Gardaí on the streets. It was just crazy couple of years. So I had no access to a gym. And I only had maybe just 2 kettlebells in the shed because I done all my training in the gym like everybody does. You go to the gym. I was in the gym 3 or 4 days a week and all the training equipment was there. I didn't need to buy anything. But all of a sudden that was taken away from me. So all I had at the back, like I said, I met my wife in art college. I had this large stone carving that my wife done in art college. Beautiful stone carving on a plinth. And I weighed that on the kitchen scales over COVID because we were in this really tight lockdown. It weighed 61 kilos. I was like, that's an interesting weight, So I started picking that up and I started really enjoying the feel or the primal aspect of stone lifting. It kind of flicked a switch inside me, you know what I mean? So I was doing that just as a bored human being over COVID, just needing to lift something. I was lifting that stone. And then I saw that Rogue Fitness. I don't know if you've seen them. And if you haven't, you really should. The Rogue Fitness documentaries on stone lifting. One in Scotland, one in Iceland, and one in the Basque region in Spain. And they were just speaking so passionately about what stone lifting meant, the history, the heritage, the culture, what it meant to their nation to be lifting stone. And I was enamored. I just fell in love with it. I loved the history aspect of the stone lifting. And that kind of led me down the rabbit hole then of looking for Irish ones,
Well, let's talk about stone lifting in general as a cultural practice. I think people have likely seen stone lifting in strongman competitions.
Exactly.
I think even in CrossFit, there's the Atlas stone. They'll do that. This isn't just some sort of made up sport for the modern age. No. As you said, there's a rich and ancient tradition of heavy stone lifting found around the world. So you mentioned Scotland, they have it in Iceland, they have it in Spain. Before we get into Irish stone lifting specifically, can you talk about stone lifting in general? Besides Scotland and Iceland and Spain, where else do we see heavy stone lifting? And what was the purpose of stone lifting?
First of all, I suppose there were so many different purposes to it. And it's in so many cultures around the world. It's the most ancient form of training. Back in ancient Rome, you have it in ancient Greece. There's a stone sitting in a Greek museum and it has carved on the side of it, Bible, son of Fola, lifted this stone over his head. And that stone is, I think it was 130 kilos. And that carving was done over 2,000 years ago. So, there's stone lifting goes all the way back. Before gyms, which is a relatively new thing, all you had was what was in the natural landscape. So heavy stones, heavy tree trunks. It was just that form of training. So it goes all the way back, as far back as you can imagine. It's also very, very, it's huge in Japan. There's a massive amount of stone lifting in Japan. In the Pacific Islands, there's a massive culture of it there. In Africa, and pretty much all over Europe. So it goes all the way back, like I said. So the purposes of them, I mean, so like say there's three stones in Iceland, and they're called the Dritvik stones, and they were fisherman's testing stones, and they denoted how much of the catch you would get on a fishing boat. So you had the Amlodi, which was 24 kilos. That's called the weakling stone. Then you had the half Dratinger, which was 54 kilos. That's the lightest stone you were allowed to get on the boat with. So you'd have to lift that, and you only got a quarter of a share of the catch. Then you could lift the half Sturker, which is 100 kilos. If you could lift a 100 kilo stone, you were half Sturker, you were half strong, which meant you got half a share. And if you could lift a 154 kilo full Sturker stone, you got a full share, and you could sit in the middle of the boat and you were one of the top rowers. So it was a way of earning your keep. It was a way of earning your money. Your strength was your worth, how good a husband or provider you were. Also, there's very similar in Sweden with farmhand testing stones. You had the half strong or the full strong stones. If you were a farmhand, you're going to have to be clearing a lot of land. So their job interview was to lift a stone, Then there was all these feat of strength stones, just say somebody who wanted to immortalize themselves for all time. And there's a load of them around Iceland, and also quite a few of them around Ireland, where somebody, to show their great strength, lifted a stone and said, like, a man would consider himself a good man if he could repeat that feat, And people would come from all over. They were lifted at funeral games as respect for the dead. They were lifted at weddings as respect for the living. I mean, their uses go, there's so many. I could talk about that all day. But they're more than just picking up something heavy. They had cultural value. They all had cultural worth,
Yeah. Well, speaking of like lifting stones at a wedding, isn't there like a scene in Braveheart where they're throwing big heavy rocks at a wedding?
Exactly.
And also you talk about, and what other archaeologists have found, is oftentimes these are a rite of passage for men. Like, this is how you determined if you were a man.
Exactly. Very much so in Scotland, that they had these rite of passage stones. So to become, from boyhood to manhood, you had to be able to lift the clan testing stone. And I went over to Scotland about 3 years ago, and I'd done that. We lifted 16 clan testing stones in one day, went around to all the different glens, and every glen had its own testing stone, Brett, And every stone was slightly different, like weighed slightly different. But to become a man in the clans, you had to be able to lift this stone either to plinth or to chest, depending on the glen you're in, So because they were like boyhood testing stones, they were all slightly lighter. You're talking anywhere between like 97 kilos up to probably about 120. But that's still pretty heavy for a stone. You might laugh at it, anybody who does deadlifting out there, but you go and pick out a 100 kilo stone or 120 kilo stone and pick up a 120 kilo barbell are two totally different things. But so they said the boyhood testing stones, and then you had the warrior stones. So to become a warrior, then these were heavier stones. So like to become like a bodyguard for the Fief Lord, or to become a warrior in the ranks of maybe the Fina, you had to lift a certain stone. So the one that really struck me was there's a Fina testing stone. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Fina, but the Fina were a very famous Irish and Celtic warrior band who were mainly in Ireland, but also in Scotland. And part of their initiation to become, and like these guys were the best of the best. They were like the SAS of 2,000 years ago. So to become the Fina, one of the Fina warriors, one of the tests was to lift the Fina stone, and the Fina stone was 127 kilos of dollarite, and you had to be able to pick that up the chest and walk with it. So, like I said, it's these rites of passage, and that really drew me in because it's something that we don't have anymore, and I feel it's something that we're kind of sorely missing. Because it really brings a culture together. It brings a clan together. Everybody used to gather around and watch these rites of passage. And then, you became a man. You were a man because you done something difficult. I find that wonderful.
Yeah, the clan stones. I know there's a Mackay clan stone in Scotland somewhere. It's been on my bucket list to go make a pilgrimage.
Seriously?
And go lift it.
Yeah, man, you gotta go. If you go, you'll just absolutely fall in love with it. I went to Scotland and driving around the Highlands, it was just magical, is all I can call it. It really, the graw, what we call the graw, the love for stone lifting was cemented in driving around Scotland and meeting all these people, because it's not just the lifting the stone, it's the actual area it's in, it's the meeting of the people, it's the hearing the stories and the history. That's what'll draw you in.
Oh, let's talk about Irish stone lifting specifically. That's what you're an expert in. And something you point out is that unlike these other stone lifting cultures, we know a lot about them, like in Scotland, in Spain, in Iceland, etc. The Irish stone lifting culture kind of got lost to history. When and why did that happen? Why did it disappear?
Right. Okay. There's a lot involved in that. I suppose a lot of it would have to do with our relationship with England, with imperialism and colonialism. We were a colonized nation up until just under 100 years ago. So a lot of our ancient rites of passage and our strength was kind of taken away from us, along with our culture and our language, I'm not going to get too nationalist about this, but a lot of that was taken from us, which then culminated in the Great Famine or genocide, whatever you want to look at it, in the 1840s, where the Irish people were literally just living on potatoes because that's all they could afford. And then there was a massive potato blight in the 40s, which killed half the nation. Half the nation died or emigrated between 1845 to 1848. So you can imagine a lot of stones, a lot of stories, and a lot of people from these areas where the stones were lifted either died or moved to America or, moved to Britain or moved to Europe. So it was this huge, huge cultural rift that happened, So, and you can imagine, if people are dying from starvation, the last thing you want to do is lift something heavy off the ground. You can barely lift yourself up off the ground. So that would probably be the main reason for this stop, because all these historians and all these people I'm meeting in these areas and all these old books that I'm finding, the cutoff point was pretty much 1845. So a lot of the culture was just lost. It was just dead. Probably through no fault of our own. And all these stories were lost. Some of them, thankfully, some of them were written down. But like us, the Irish people, our culture is an oral culture. We're a storytelling people. I think we're kind of renowned for it worldwide. And the stories stayed, father to son and mother to daughter. The stories of the stones remained, and they were carried on down through the years. And I'm still finding, Brett, when I go to these places, there's always someone who will know about it. There's always somebody who still knows the story that was passed down from his father and his great-grandfather and all the way back. It's only a couple of people. We're probably within maybe 2 generations of this being lost altogether. But that's why I'm just so happy to be able to bring, to be part of the resurgence and the kind of the re-emergence of Irish strength culture, but also Irish strength. We were beaten down for so long from, like I said, colonialism and from other things as well, but to be part of this, there's this whole cultural wave coming back. Even in the last, you can feel it in the last 5 years. People are so proud now to be Irish, and their culture's coming back, their language is coming back, and our strength is now coming back. And it's such an honor to be part of that.
What role did stone lifting play in Irish culture?
Yeah, so all these stories are so cool because every Sunday there was what they call the trials of strength. So because, people had nothing, it was a culture of boredom as well. So, people used to meet up on Sundays at the local crossroads or in places of cultural merit, So like say at wharfs or like harbours. So all the men would meet up before or after Mass, and they would lift these stones on the Sundays, And you got great social status for being able to lift some of these stones. Who could lift them the highest? The men spoke them with honour, and, the women might find you more attractive. And, that was the trials of strength on the Sundays. And also they were very important at funeral games, like you were saying with the Scottish ones. There was a lot of these graveyards, like probably about 70% of the stones I'm finding are in graveyards. And these were the testing stones of the funeral games. Like funerals pre-1840s used to last maybe 2 or 3 days. So they would have a whole day of funeral games, like almost like a celebration of life, So they had like collar and elbow wrestling, they'd have running, they'd have leaping, and they'd have stone lifting. So they were part of the culture. They were deeply ingrained in who we are as a people. And it's great to see them coming back now.
Okay, let's walk us through about how you find these stones, because you had to become, you weren't an archaeologist or a folklorist before you found these stones, but you had to become one to discover them. Where does your research start?
Yeah, so the research, it used to start because when I started this, there was no one had any interest in this, only me, It was just me going off on this kind of innocent journey by myself. So my first stone that I found it was just such an awesome story. Because I went onto Google, Brett, and I just typed in Irish lifting stones. And, nothing came up. But after a little bit of research, I found there was a man called Dr. Conor Heffernan, who is a professor actually up in Ulster University. And he had a piece written about the possibility of Irish lifting stones. He's a professor of sociology and strength history. So I was reading his piece, and he'd mentioned a man called Liam O'Flaherty. Liam O'Flaherty is a very famous Irish writer, essayist, and short story writer. And he'd written a story called The Stone. So Liam O'Flaherty's out of print now, but so I ordered his book, and then I got this book called the stone, and like it's only about a 9-page short story, but the way he described the stone in this story was so vivid. I was like, that has to be a real thing, or unless he's the best writer I've ever read. The way he describes the stone, the area it's in, the way it made him feel when he lifted it. I'm like, this guy had lifted this stone. I mean, there's one piece in particular, I'll read it to you if you don't mind. So this is an excerpt from Liam O'Flaherty's story that's called The Stone. It was a round block of granite, and it sparkled as the sunshine shone on the particles of mica in its surface. It lay on the ground on a clear space between the rocks. All around it there were bruised stones, bruised to a powder, and where it lay there was a little hollow. That stone had lain in that place as long as the oldest traditions in the village could remember, and from time immemorial, it had been the custom of the young men of the village to test their strength by lifting it. I was like, that's just such a cool line. That grabbed me straight away. And this is on Inishmore, which is a small island off the west coast of Galway. So I was like enamored with this story. So I just started researching the Aran Islands, and I found that there was a woman online who was speaking on a Reddit thread about 10 years ago called Fiona, and she was speaking to the great Peter Martin, who was the stone finder over in Scotland. And she was like, yeah, the story that Liam O'Flaherty wrote about is true. She said, it's a real thing. The stone is a real stone. It's down on this pathway in Gortnacoppel. And I think it's still there. She always written out and read it. I was like, are you serious? So straight away, I jumped into a camper van. My friends, we drove like 4.5 hours over to Galway, got on the ferry, and cycled down to this place. It's a 25-minute cycle. And we got to this rough boulder strewn pathway in Gortnacoppel. And I was just looking around, and like, the Aran Islands is just stone. It's like walking on the surface of the moon. It's just rocks. It's this glacial karst landscape. There's just rocks everywhere, So like, how am I going to know which rock is the rock? There's tens of thousands of them here. But I was walking down, and I had this book in front of me, and I was reading it, and it said it lay in the ground in a clear space between the rocks. And I was walking down this pathway, and I could see this pink stone in a field of grey, just this pink stone standing out like a beacon. And I walked down, and there it was with these bruised stones all around it. And I was like, that has to be it. Do you know when something calls you? Like, that has to be it, So it just so happened that there was a guy giving a walking tour with a couple of Americans. And I went up and I accosted him and said, look, excuse me. I said, I have to ask you, sorry for interrupting. Do you know anything about the lifting stone? Oh, yeah, that's it down there, he said. And I was like, the pink one? He said, yeah, the pink one there in the patch of grass. He said, yeah, we call it the Mullane Port Phelan Dune. He had a name for it as well, So that was it. Like, that was our first lifting stone found in Ireland. And it came from a story, a book written back in 1927. And I'd say no one had probably lifted it since 1927, because no one had in living memory had lifted on the island, because I asked a lot of the old islanders. So that was the very first one, which just kind of almost fell into my lap. The next 2 or 3 was the same. And then I went on to it, the Irish government, one of the best things they ever done back in 1927, they put folklore on the school curriculum. So they said to the school kids, like say 12-year-old kids, go back to your mum and dad and granddads and ask them about your local traditions or folklore in your local area. So for 3 years, folklore was on the school curriculum, and all the children in all the schools in all of Ireland collected tens of thousands of stories about, anything that happened, whether it be battles or old mythologies, but also there was folk heroes and local heroes and strong men and strong women, Dina Cálula, they called them. And that's all collated and it's up in a library up in Dublin. So I just started reading that. They actually have it all digitized now online as well. It's called ducas.ie. And I started scanning through Ducas and looking for stories of stones. And I found about 8 or 10 from those old stories. But I mean, it's amazing because, like I said, you feel like Indiana Jones because you're reading through these old stories that are 100 years old. And then you're driving to these places, and some of them are so old they're not even on Google Maps. And then you're just asking locals, and they're, some people might know, but then they point you to a guy who does know. And he's like, yeah, it's just over there or across that field. And then you walk into this field and there might be this old ruined church, and beside the church will be this totally out of place stone, which is the lifting stone of the area. It's just been incredible. It's been an absolute adventure story over the past couple of years, We're
going to take a quick break for a word from our sponsors. And now back to the show. And as your work has gotten more publicity, are people coming out of the woodwork to share where stones are?
Oh man, the difference now, because like I said, it started off with me just like with a bill hook in my car, just driving around Ireland, and hacking through hedges and sometimes find them, sometimes not. But now, because I just I can't believe the publicity it's been getting, It's been kind of jarring a little bit, but like in a good way, because Now, it's just something I wasn't expecting. I was going to be doing this anyway, but people have latched onto it. Like I said, it's this whole cultural resurgence that's happening over Ireland. There's this wave of national pride that's there now, and people have just fallen in love with this journey. So there's people coming, like I said, coming out of the woodwork. I'm just back from like Saturday, 3 days ago. I'm back with another find down in County Cork, that a man said, I was just talking to a local woman asking for directions, and she said, yeah, it's just down there past the lifting stone on the right-hand side. He's like, what? What do you mean? Yeah, she had the lifting stone down there in the crossroads. And so I said, people in the area know, but nobody else knows, So he phoned me straight away, David, you won't believe it. I'm just after this stones are just have to fall into my lap. And we went down and we got a lift in that stone on Saturday. And it's nearly on the weekly now that there's people saying there's one here, there's stories here. My granddad said, my great granddad was talking to me. It's awesome. People are falling in love with it now, to be honest with you.
And you mentioned a lot of these stones are in cemeteries because they were used in funeral graves, correct?
Yeah, true.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned, in an interview, the cemeteries also served as you're able to do it in secret because at the time, within what you're talking about with the imperialism, there was an attempt to kind of squash these local traditions. And so the Irish would be like, well, we'll go to the cemetery at night and do this so they don't see us.
Exactly. Well, you have you had hedge schools. They call them hedge priests who said Catholic Mass in graveyards or in ditches, or at mass stones, they call them. So just like at a prominent rock in the area, people would meet and they would say Mass there, or they would be teaching children Irish because they couldn't teach it in schools. They weren't allowed to. So they were teaching children the Irish language literally in ditches, to keep the culture alive. But there's a stone up in County Cavan, up in a place called Aughrim or Den. There's a stone called the Flag of Den. And the Flag of Den, back in the 16th and 17th centuries, was a mass stone. So this is where the Catholic priest would come and say Mass on this stone. And there's a big cross carved into the top of it. It's about 3.5 foot long, 3 foot wide, and there's a carved cross on the top of it. And that was used as a mass rock to say Catholic Mass in a graveyard with people on the lookout for British soldiers, So the history behind these things is incredible. I mean, that's 16th, 17th century when we were under penal law. But before that stone was also used as what they call a pagan cursing stone. So, Ireland is also full of these cursing stones that if you could flip a stone over or turn it anti-clockwise, you could lay what they call a pishog or a curse on someone who had done you wrong. So this was a pagan cursing stone pre-Catholicism, which only came to Ireland maybe in the year 700. So, that stone the history behind it is absolutely unbelievable. So pagan cursing stone, then a Catholic altar stone, and then it was also used from the 17th century as a lifting stone. So the men at funerals, all the strong men from the different parishes would see could they lift that stone to their knees. And if you could lift that massive flagstone to your knees, that was word of you getting into Ducas or being spoken of with massive respect in your local area. And I'm really, really proud to say that I found that stone. It was really difficult to find because no one had cut the graveyard I was in over 20 years. So the weeds were 8 feet tall. I was there with a billhook for 2.5 hours and I managed to find that stone and I managed to get a lift on it up to my knees. So it was just an amazing moment. The history in that thing is incredible.
How many stones have you discovered so far?
Including last weekend, I have 31 with another 3 coming in the next month with leads. So 31 found. 31. And then with all these stones, you do attempt to lift them, correct? Oh, I do more than attempt.
You do? All right, you do? Okay.
I've lifted all bar one. So I'm really, really proud to say that because the Irish lifting stones, Brett, are massive. They're really, really heavy. You're talking average about 170 kilos. Wow. So, the Limo Flaherty stone is 171. Like the Flag of Den is roughly 220, So, they're absolutely massive.
What's the heaviest stone you've lifted and found?
The heaviest stone, I think, would be the Flag of Den at 220. But, the one last weekend we weighed it at 203. That's not too far off, the one down in Cork. And, a lot of these, it was just, you had to get what they call getting the wind under them, getting the gwe fua, the wind under it. So just to get it off the ground was the valid lift,
Okay. I was going to ask you the valid. So as long as you get it off the ground, you're good.
Some of them, depending on the area. There's all these different rules in the different areas. Some of them, it was literally just to get the gwe fua, get the wind under it. Some of them, it was to get them to your knees. Some of them was to get them to your chest. So it all depended on the area you're in,
What's the oldest stone you found?
Oh, there's a good few of them are pre-Christian.
Oh, wow.
So, there's one I found on the island of Inishboffin, which is an ancient enchanted island actually off the west coast of Mayo. That's a Balán stone. So Balán stone was a druidic offering stone. So like a druidic offering bowl to the old Celtic gods like Lugh or Crumcruach. And like you're talking 2,500, maybe 3,000 years old, that was used as a conduit to deities well before Christianity came here. So, I mean, you're talking thousands of years old.
I mean, is there an estimate of how many stones there might be in Ireland?
I mean, I remember talking to somebody on a podcast like this 2 years ago, and we just found the first one. We'd found the Liam O'Flaherty stone, and I remember this being a huge deal, and I remember getting wicked emotional about it because we'd finally gotten on the map. We were back, we had one stone, and I was talking to a famous man called Stevie Shanks, whose dad, Jack Shanks, is one of the most prominent Dinny stone lifters in the world. And Stevie saying, imagine if we got 10 stones, he was there, imagine if we got 10, but double figures, wouldn't that be incredible? And I remember thinking, I hope so, but it's doubtful because I didn't know where to even look at that stage. So, I mean, for me to go from 1 to 31 in just under 2 years, I mean, I really think the sky's the limit on this because I think this was a nationwide culture. It's not just concentrated in one area. It's a nationwide culture. And I think practically, I would say in almost every village in Ireland, every crossroads had a testing stone, whether it was a putting stone or a lifting stone. So I'm thinking there could be hundreds. I think there could be hundreds over here.
So you're not just finding these stones and lifting them, you're also cataloging the stories. You've become a folklorist. Are there any stones that have a unique story that you're fond of?
Oh, I mean, they're all incredible. I mean, all of the stories are just amazing. It's hard to pinpoint one down. Do you think in the likes of maybe something like magical attached to it?
Let's do that. I want like something magical. I want something mythical.
So, I mean, the stone, let's just say that the last one I found, it's called Cluck on Cahir Darach, which means the stone of the Red Chair. And it's at the Red Chair Cross in Kildorrery in County Cork. So it's called the Red Chair Cross because the ancient High King of Munster, which is the province I live in Ireland, was a man called Mahon, and he was killed at that cross in the year 976. And then his younger brother, Brian Boru, who was probably one of the most famous figures in Irish history, he became then the next king of Munster, and then he became the High King of Ireland, and he drove out the Vikings, the Danes, in the Battle of Clontarf. So, I mean, you're talking the history behind that thing is absolutely incredible. But I mean, the best mythological one I can think of is the Cluck on Darach up in County Mayo, which is just unbelievable. It's like there's giants throwing stones all over Ireland, right? So I mean, every glacial erratic in Ireland, the mythology behind them was there was a giant who threw the stone from a mountaintop, right? So I mean, they could be anything up to 60, 100, 200 tons, massive stones. But there was this giant throwing stone in Auchagaur up in County Mayo. And it said all the stones have that the giant put the mark of his hands in the top of the stone where he squeezed it like soft clay. And this giant used to throw the stone around like a pebble. And then the Irish men in the area used to see were they as strong as the giant. So they would also try and lift the stone. So I thought that was just the coolest story I'd ever heard. It was like, you're telling me that there's a stone that's related to an Irish giant. The marks of his hands, his fingerprints are on the top of the stone where he picked the stone up and squeezed it. And it's still there. So I went up to that place, and it's a 5.5 hour drive from where I am in the bottom of Ireland. And I drove into this village, and on the village green, right in the middle of the green, was this massive stone with these huge fingerprint marks in the top of the stone, thumbprint, fingerprint marks. And that's the giant's throwing stone of Auchagaur. And I got a lift on that, broke the ground with it, weighed it at 182 kilos. But I mean, there's mythology, there's lore. I mean, it's like mythology and reality. And like that stone is the bridge in the middle of the two of them. You know what I mean? It's the bridge between both. And I think that's what stone lifting is, especially in Ireland. It's the intersection of mythology, folklore, and reality. It's just incredible.
Are you learning anything about the people and the men who have lifted these stones? Like, I mean, are you sort of learning the genealogy of these stones?
Definitely. I mean, it's very important. I mean, it's not a lifting stone unless someone had lifted it before. So there's always a story about a man who'd lifted it. I mean, there's one in Clogheen in County Tipperary where a man called Thomas Lonergan was the only man in the parish who could lift this stone. And up to 200 men would come every Sunday and see could they pick the stone up, but nobody could pick it up, only Thomas Lonergan. So he got massive respect. And it's a wicked awkward stone. I went down and found it's like a rectangular shape. So it's very, very hard to pick up. It weighs 177.5 kilos. And there's no one said how high he lifted it. I mean, I got it up myself up to about mid-calf, which is a pretty decent lift on an awkward stone. But I had Sean Urquhart, who's probably one of the best natural stone lifters in the world. He came over to me there over the summer, and we'd done a stone lifting tour, the very first Irish stone lifting tour. And he picked that stone up to his chest, and it was just one of the most amazing things I'd ever seen. It was just incredible. You know, when you're blown away by something, all you can do is laugh. You know, you're like, I can't believe I've seen that, you know. But all of these stones, there's always somebody who had lifted it before. And what you're doing is you're putting your hands where they put their hands, anything up to 1,000, 2,000 years ago. So I just think that's just so cool. You're reaching back to the past and you're grabbing onto these people through the stone, you know?
Yeah, that is really cool. Is there a place where you're cataloging this so other people can see and learn about this or contribute? Are you doing this online?
Yeah. I'm doing it online. I mean, I'm also writing a book. I'm nearly finished writing the book, actually. The book is literally almost like a diary of my Grail diary, I suppose you call it, of the finds, the meeting the people, the stories, and the lifting of the stone, how it felt, all that kind of stuff. But if you want to find me online, I'm down as Indiana Stones online. Indiana Stones on Instagram. So if you hit me up on that, you'll just see me lifting a massive pink boulder. You can't miss me. And all of the stories are on that as well.
On there. Well, let's talk about stone lifting. Let's say someone's listening to this and they're like, I want to lift one of these stones. Or I want to go to Scotland and lift the Clan Mackay stone. But here's the thing. If you deadlift 405 pounds, 500 pounds, 600 pounds, you might think, well, I'm really strong. Lifting a 400-pound stone, that is really difficult. Like, what makes lifting a stone so hard?
I mean, like, first of all, your surroundings dictate the lift. You're outside, you know, you're not in a nice, comfortable, warm gym. You're in Scotland, you're in Ireland, mainly in the west of Ireland. It's a lot of the time it's lashing rain, the ground is wet, it's muddy, your footing isn't great, you know. Then you got the texture of the stone. You know, it could be a very, very round stone, especially some of the ones in Scotland. They're very, very rounded. They've been run through rivers for thousands of years. So they're smooth like marble, you know, so your grip becomes an issue. You're also going down lower. You're going down like to grass level. You're going down to the ground. You're not picking up a nice knurled bar with chalk. You're picking up something that's on the ground. And the center of gravity is difficult. You know, it's awkward. It's oddly shaped. A lot of the ones in Ireland are very oddly shaped. So you have to find the center of gravity. And then you're pulling from a lower position. So like you're not pulling from a nice upright deadlift position. You're pulling from a much lower position. So like your glutes and your hamstrings and your hips have to be very, very strong. You know, it's a totally different thing. I mean, the way I describe it to people is if you watch the Arnolds, you know, I watch the Arnold strongman events. You've guys over there who deadlift maybe 450 kilos, well over 400 kilos. But they're lifting the Bill Odden tombstone, they call it, which is 186. And a lot of those guys can't even pick that stone up. You know, so you're talking like they're going well over double that in a deadlift and they can pick it up relatively easily. But some of them can't pick up a 186 kilo stone even inside with tacky towels. So it just goes to show you how difficult it is to pick up an oddly shaped object as opposed to something that's made to be lifted, like a barbell.
Is there like a technique you need to use so you don't injure yourself during the lift, or is it just trial and error? Because I mean, like with deadlift, right? There's like a specific technique you use, right? You set your back, extend your lower back so your back's not rounded, and then you obviously you can't do that when you're lifting a stone. So how do you lift a stone without giving yourself a hernia?
Everybody's like yeah. Like everybody's biomechanics are different. You know, everybody's lever lengths are different. I mean, I'm lucky I got really long arms. So I can get down to a nice neutral position, keep my back straight and use my legs. You know, it's all legs. You know, of course, your back has to be strong, but I mean, I'm pretty much, I'm feeling it in my hamstrings and my hips and my glutes and a little bit of lower back then as it comes up a bit higher. But it's pretty much a deadlift feel for me when I'm doing it. But I mean, I've seen guys lift with slightly rounded backs. You know, and I know a lot of stone lifters online now, and I've seen them, and my God, are they some strong people, you know? But again, like you have to be careful. Like anything, you have to start light and get your technique right first. So do what feels right for you. If it feels comfortable, start light, you know, start around the 40, 50, 60, 70 kilo mark and just start building reps. And as you get stronger, just keep going with that same technique. And as long as it feels comfortable, keep going with it.
Do you develop programming for stones? Like, let's say you discover a stone and it's really heavy. Do you think about what can I do so I prep myself so I can lift that stone? Or do you just go in there like, I'm just going to make the attempt? No training required.
I'm coming from kettlebell sport, which is strength endurance. So, I mean, I never lifted heavy, you know, before. I never lifted heavy. So, I mean, I'm coming to some of the heaviest lifting stones in the world, the Irish stones. Like, they're some of the heaviest in the world. This is like the boss level now, you know? So it's like you're coming in at some of the heaviest lifting stones in the world, but without a massive strength background. So, I mean, I've had to work really hard over the past 2 years to be able to lift these stones up. But yeah, what I have done is I'm just using like say a linear deadlift program, but I'm applying that with stone lifting. So what I have is a load of different kettlebells in weights out the back garden, and I have a nice flat stone. So I'm just using that flat stone as almost like a base. It weighs 90 kilos a stone, and I'm stacking kettlebells on top of that and using that as almost like a deadlift strength day twice a week. So I've built that up now to where I'm doubling 180 kilos off the ground. So I'm using the 90 kilo stone with the 42 and a 48 kilo kettlebell. But I've built that up over 2 years. I mean, I remember going over to the Limo Flaherty stone, Brett, and I couldn't budge it. I couldn't get it an envelope's width off the ground, and it weighs 171 kilos. I put in 16 months of training, and I went back and I lifted it in front of a crowd about 3 months ago. And it was just an incredible validation for putting in hard work, because like you're not just going to be able to pick up these things straight away. You have to work at it. You know, the stone is always going to be the same. It's always going to be the same weight. The stone weighs the same from 1 year to the next. But like, what do you have to do to get better at lifting it? You have to get stronger. So write your program and off you go, you know.
And what's been interesting about, because of your work and the work of other people reviving stone lifting in other countries and other cultures, it's starting to spread. So even if you live in the United States that doesn't have a stone lifting culture, you're actually starting to see stone lifting cultures develop in the United States. I think there's some places some of the states,
lifting cultures.
Yeah, some of the states are developed. Yeah, Utah's got a lifting culture where there's like lifting stones throughout the state.
Yeah, Ohio, Sean Urquhart has his in Ohio as well. You have Utah, you have the guys up in Canada, the Edmonton Stones in Canada. So you've guys starting their own culture, which I just think is wonderful. You know what I mean? Because in 100 years' time, that will be a historical stone, you know? Yeah. And even in 50 years' time, it will be. In 20 years' time, it will be. It's like, oh, that's the stone that such and such a guy used to lift. And people will come from all over to lift it then. You know, you're starting a culture, which I just think is commendable. It's absolutely fantastic. And that's happening all over America. It's happening all over the world. People are starting their own cultures now. And like I said, in the future, it's like the old man planting an acorn. He'll never see the tree, but they're planting the seeds of these stone lifting cultures that they won't see, but they will have cultural value in the years to come. I just think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. That's universal across cultures. There's something about just picking up a heavy stone it's so visceral. I think that's why people are drawn to it.
It's primal. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's primal. It's the bones of man versus the bones of the earth, and you can feel it in your DNA. And you know what? It looks awesome. And people respond to it because like everybody knows a stone is heavy. And everybody knows, oh my God, look at that. I'd never be able to pick that up, And some of these stones I'm looking at, I started off thinking, I'll never be able to pick that up. And now I am. So it's like, it's an awesome, awesome thing. And like I said, it's deeply rooted, I think, in who we are as humans.
You've been doing this for 2 years. What has stone lifting taught you about being a man?
Wow, that's a good question. It's taught me perseverance. It's taught me that if you want something, you have to work for it. Sometimes it's not going to happen straight away. I mean, some people could be very lucky and just be very strong naturally. But it taught me hard work and discipline. And I'm out there in the nighttime and it gets dark at 4:00 in the evening here now. And I'm out in the dark and the cold and the rain and I'm lifting, training all winter. And then I'm going off and I'm having my day in the sun then when I go lift these stones in the summertime. And it's taught me that perseverance and willingness to put in hard work and know that it'll take time, but you'll get there eventually. And the same thing with kettlebell sport. It taught me grit. It tempered the steel. You become like a more distilled, more potent version of yourself when you work towards something and then you get it. That feeling is just awesome.
Well, you mentioned that people can keep up with you on Instagram at Indiana Stones, which I love that Instagram handle. Is there anywhere else people can go to learn more about your work?
Check out the GQ article as well. Just type in GQ and my name, David Keohan, and that'll come up. And I've done a couple of cool podcasts as well, like the one we're doing now. And I'm just so grateful. Thank you so much for having me on, Brett. So have a read and have a listen and see what you think. And anybody wants to give me some support, I have a Patreon page because it's expensive to be driving around Ireland, but going to all these different places and putting all the work in. So I'd appreciate it. And I'll follow and I like as well if you could.
Fantastic. Well, David Keohan, thanks for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Brett. I really appreciate it, man. Slán.
My guest today was David Keohan. You can find more information about his work at his Instagram page. It's Indiana Stones. Also, check out our show notes at aom.is/stonelifting, where you find links to resources where we delve deeper into this topic. Well, that wraps up another edition of the AOM podcast. Make sure to check out our website at artofmanliness.com where you can find our podcast archives, as well as thousands of articles that we've written over the years about pretty much anything you can think of. And if you haven't done so already, I'd appreciate it if you take 1 minute to give us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps out a lot. And if you've done that already, thank you. Please consider sharing the show with a friend or family member who you think will get something out of it. As always, thank you for the continued support. And until next time, it's Brett McKay, reminding you to not listen to the AOM podcast, but put what you've heard into action.